Today's video is brought to you by Grey Viking Games. Click the link in the description below to buy mtg Arena codes for cosmetics, packs, and more. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jeff, and today we're going to have some fun diving into some Strixhaven School of Mages spoilers. Super excited for this one, and we're going to be diving into it real quick. We have a bunch of Lorehold cards to talk about, a bunch of just really good, solid cards, a whole archetype for spirits I'm really excited for. Make sure you guys hit the like button, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can see more news contents coming out, as well as awesome gameplay once these cards actually come out. So yeah, do it. All right, let's jump into it. All right, so first off, we of course get Lorehold himself, 7 mana 5/5 Elder Dragon, Velomachus Lorehold. So it has Flying, Vigilance, and Haste. Seems legit already. It is 7 mana, so it's got to be something amazing, and I think that this is pretty sweet. So whenever it attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to its power from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of the library in random order. So with this, for 7 mana, you get to attack in with a Flying, Vigilant, and Haste dragon, which is already pretty sweet stuff. And then you get a free spell that can be 5 mana or less, 5 mana value or less. And so pretty sweet stuff. I'm not exactly sure what spells would be the best for that kind of thing, but there's got to be some pretty busted stuff you can do with this. First off, just burn spells can be good. Any kind of removal is decent to have. Any kind of value with card draw can be decent. I'm not totally sure like what the best thing to be playing with would be, but I think we're going to keep getting more and more awesome things to be playing with it. This seems like I'm not sure what you do in Commander to break this card. I'm not even sure what to do in Historic as far as it goes to make it fully busted, but it's a really sweet top-end dragon that gives value by itself. And so even if it's just like tutoring this up with Magda, just so they can potentially get a spell cast, maybe to get more, more treasures or more whatever, this can be a really, really busted awesome card. So super excited for this one. I do think this can see play. It's probably going to see play more in a Magda tutor deck than just ramping up into it, but it's a sweet dragon. I like it. All right, we get to see Lorehold. This is the mythic that I think I'm most excited for. I don't know, this is an interesting one. Typically 5 mana 4/5s that don't really do much I'm not as excited for, but this is a lord for an archetype that Lorehold is really diving into. So spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. So it's not a spirit itself, but also says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token copy that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. And it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return to the exiled card, or return the exiled card to your graveyard. So pretty insane stuff here. First off, it doesn't just get exiled for the remainder of the game. If you have some other like reanimation cards, which there are a few in Boros Colors as well, sorry, Lorehold Colors, my bad, that there are some cool ways you can keep, having it go to the graveyard is nice here too. This is basically Mothra, which Mothra has already been really, really powerful. The biggest issue with Mothra is that it doesn't affect the board right away. And while this card doesn't necessarily affect the board right away, like it does affect the board as far as anyone that will remove it, you remove other creatures, suddenly they will come back as flyers. This kind of has that same type of effect where anything that would die, and it says another one as well. So if they do find removal for this, it'll have issues. But giving spirits +1/+1, trample, and haste actually is a pretty legitimate strategy. And I think we'll get that a lot more as I go through more of the cards, but there actually is a lot of spirit synergies here, and I do think that this can be pretty powerful. Even with just some of the spirits we already have, giving them trample and haste is actually pretty sweet stuff. Like that, those are two really powerful. Like trample is really good by itself. Giving it +1 as well is good stuff. So I'm actually really excited for this one. If this ever sticks onto turn 6, this will be a really, really busted card. I'm not sure if this is quite competitive, but there's an archetype here that I'm really excited for. So let's dive into some of the other cards here. Here's another spirit for us. 2 mana 1/3 flyer spirit cleric. Whenever a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. So that's actually pretty sweet. So any ETB effects on anything, not just creatures, where like Hushbringer stops the ETB effects. This shuts down all of the permanents that would enter the battlefield, including your own. but you can counter it unless the controller pays 2. So they can still have a way to get around it if it's a really nice and worthwhile effect. But this at least makes it more difficult to do. You can stack this, of course, by having more strict proctors. So pretty sweet cleric. I think it's awesome. It actually does work with the previous guy as well, where this is not an ETB effect. This is just whenever something dies. And so I don't know, could be good. I'm not sure. All right, dive into some other stuff. Efreet, Flame Painter, 4 mana. 1/4 with double strike. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant and sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. And it has double strike, so you get to do that twice. Busted, I know, right? If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile instead. This is so we just really got one of the new cards in Historic that for 4 mana you can do the same type of effect. And we were talking, and I was thinking about how powerful that would be. And yeah, this can stay on the battlefield and die right away if it doesn't get, if it is dealt with right away. It's kind of annoying. But if it gets to attack on turn 5, or if you ramp this out a little bit early and you had an ability to like discard a few really powerful ultimatum spells or whatever, you get to double strike and cast potentially 2 ultimatum spells on turn 5. What? This is so busted. I'm not sure this is powerful enough to be consistent, but if it ever hits, oh my goodness. I'm not sure what an Ifrit is, but I'm excited to learn what that is. But it's an Ifrit Shaman. And this is that's a pretty sweet ability. So I'm not sure if you'll actually be able to get in for the attacks. It is hard to get through any chump blockers with this as well, unless you give it double strike, or sorry, unless you give it trample and extra power. But it seems really busted. Fun way to try to get a bunch of ultimatums out right away. So super exciting card. All right, diving into a few others. Blade Historian. 4 mana, either all Boros, or it's Lorehold split colors, is that what you call those? I don't even know. Anyway, attacking creatures you control have double strike, which is awesome. I honestly just love cards that are pretty simple. This is a very simple ability. Just like any attacking creatures you have, they have double strike. Sweet. Awesome. It counts itself as well, so it's a 2/3 with double strike if ever it's attacking in, not on defense, but you can be attacking with a lot of good power. It's also a cleric, which is relevant, and so this is actually a pretty sweet card. If you can play this in with Righteous Valkyrie already in the cleric's deck, yeah, you have to be in like all mono white, but I think a full mono white, or even splashing into red for some other stuff, cleric's deck can actually be really busted as well. And then just being able to give, gain enough life, potentially grow your board like crazy with a Righteous Valkyrie, and then have this as like a 1 or 2 of in the deck just to be a finisher in a cleric deck could be pretty fun. I'm not sure if that's quite the competitive way to go, but it does seem pretty fun. I think this is also really powerful in a commander setting, probably more so than constructed, but I am really excited for this effect. It's pretty cool. Sparring Regimen. We have a lot of cards to go through. Sorry if I'm going through a little bit quickly on these ones. It's because there's a lot here today. So Sparring Regimen, 3 mana enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you learn, which is, again, I think that the more learn cards that we're getting, I'm actually getting more and more excited for this. There's some that are pretty awesome. It does equate to just straight drawing a card. And I would probably say it equates to drawing a card in the same equivalence there, because when you draw a card, it could be land, could be something amazing, where when you go to lessons, you're going to get the thing that you want, but they're not necessarily costed fairly or whatever with everything, but they're decent enough that it's the same as if you had the chance of drawing a card or drawing a land or something else, so it should fit the situation pretty well. Anyway, so I like the learn mechanic more and more I think about it. I think it actually is probably equivalent to draw, if not even maybe a little bit better. All right, and then whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature and untap it. All right, so yeah, whenever you attack, just put a counter onto something and untap it. Is actually really nice to have if you are just attacking with like one creature over and over again. This can be a way to just kind of keep getting it bigger, have basically give it vigilance, or have multiple things to be attacking in with. So I'm not sure if I like this for like competitive constructed play, but it is a decent card. I do like it. So let's dive into some other stuff here. Semester's End. Yay, end of the semester. 4 mana instant. Exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control at the beginning of the next end step. Return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counter if it's a creature and additional loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker. So we just really got Teferi's Protection. This is basically like a Teferi's Protection, except it doesn't phase everything out. You don't phase out, so you can still be hit, all that kind of stuff. But the idea of this is either you play this in in something. So one of the issues with Teferi's protection is it doesn't actually recause any ETB effects or anything like that. This is basically Yorion's ability. It really is, but you can do it at instant speed first off, which is awesome. Being able to have Yorion's ability happen on their turn, and then at the end step you get all the stuff enter, but then you also get to attack in with everything as well, which is pretty sweet. So I think this could already go pretty easily into a Yorion deck just as a 2-of, or maybe instead of playing multiple extra copies of Yorion, just replace this instead because it does the same effect that you need. Yorion is also awesome by itself as well, but this might be better just because it's at instant speed. This is better if I think you're playing more creature-based stuff, because it is only creatures or planeswalkers, not permanents in general, so not quite the Yorion effect. But if you are playing, there's a lot of Yorion decks that have been more based on creatures and planeswalkers in general. This could be pretty sweet, and you can wait to see if they attack in and to try to kill a planeswalker. Blanket, they don't get to actually hit the planeswalker. You didn't get hit as well. Life is good. So I'm rating this one pretty high as a 2-of to go into Yorion decks. I'm not sure if it'll quite be competitive, but I could definitely see it being playable, or played pretty often even. All right, Academic Prohibition, 2 mana lesson card. Here we go with a modal lesson card. Choose a non-land card name. Opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name until your next turn, or choose target non-land permanent until your next turn. It can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So just choose a target non-land permanent that basically gets the what's it called, I can't think of it right now, pacifism type of effect, but the one that also can't let them activate the abilities. Which is nice. It's only until one turn. So like I said, this is a lesson card. It's not quite a full pacifism card. It's not quite as good, but you also get the ability to do something else as well, which means they can't cast a certain spell. If ultimatum's coming or a board wipes coming or something like that, this might just be the lesson card that you need to bring into your hand to be perfect. So if you're playing a white deck and you have learn 4 of these go into your deck just because it's good enough. If you're going to be playing creatures attack in with, great. If you're trying to slow the opponent down and tempo them out a little bit, or kind of control the game a little bit, so you can't cast the most important spells that they're casting. Honestly, good stuff. This is a sweet lesson card. I like it. It's definitely going to see play. All right, Illuminate History, 4 mana lesson card again. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So here's another spirit creature token. This is a lesson card, so it can be something you get with the learn effect, which is pretty nice. And you only get to discard as many cards as you have and then draw that many cards. Valakut's Awakening, you draw a +1 because it replaces itself while you're doing that. This doesn't replace itself. You'll cast it so that and technically is out of your hand, and then you'll discard the cards and draw more. But the fact that you get a 3/2 out of it as well is decent. Again, this is a lesson card, and so this is not something that's in your main deck. I wouldn't put this in my main deck. I'd rather be playing Valakut Awakening because it's way better to potentially be a land for me as well, digging for the effects. But if you are just like, okay, the hand that I have is not working for me, I need to refill this, do something like that, then suddenly you can have a wheel effect, kind of replace your hand, also get a 3/2 blocker to maybe help things out. I don't know. I think it's a decent lesson card. Okay, sweet. Throw 2 of those in the sideboard, and if I need it, great. that's awesome. I'm honestly, I think the learn mechanic is, we're gonna have to learn the lessons from the learn and lesson mechanic quite a bit, but I think that overall they're gonna end up being one of the most powerful I think effects from this set in my mind, although Magecraft is looking pretty busted too, so we'll see. All right, into some of the uncommon stuff. Starting off with an uncommon commander or legendary creature here. 5 mana, the Quintorius Field Historian. This is the one that has the art of all the Lorehold stuff. Is this elephant? Anyways, Elephant Cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+0. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So again, hitting in that 5-drop slot. This is one of the biggest issues with this, is that I think that the other Spirit Lord basically is better, but this one actually has a way of creating spirits in different ways. I guess the other one can make sure that things go to exile. It doesn't let it die before it goes to exile. It's just like when it dies, you exile it. I believe that's how that one's read. Let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. because I think these would go pretty well together. So yeah, spirits get +1/+1, have trample and haste. I'm not sure how. The biggest issue here is that they're both competing for the exact same slot, which makes this really difficult. This says whenever non-token creature you control dies, exile it. I'm not sure if for it to actually officially die. The dice says it goes from the battlefield to the graveyard, and so I'm not sure if it actually officially completes its journey to the graveyard to get there and then gets exiled. If that's the case, then those would work really well together, where it would actually die and then we remove from the graveyard for that split second there. I'm not totally sure how that works, and you guys would have to remind me or tell me down in the comments below. But if that's the case, these has 2 5-drops, which is really difficult to get 2 5-drops to actually stick on the board for very long. But if you ever get it to happen, could be really sweet, really fun stuff. Also the life's bounties, selfless savers, those kinds of things to help protect them, to also sacrifice themselves to potentially make more 3/2 spirit tokens to do at the end step, to then attack in with a bunch of damage with giving +2 to +2/+1 between these two lords to your spirits, and trample and haste. Can be pretty busted stuff. So I think it can be really good. I'm not totally sure. That's the biggest issue, is that just having 2 5-drop lords for the exact same thing is really hard to actually make happen. You don't want to play full force of each of those. Anyways, I'm not sure exactly how to play these cards. I think that you take the first one and not this one, but I'm not sure. All right, return past color. 6 mana. I like how they're doing the split mana on this one, where it's 1 red, 1 dual, or 1 split, and then 1 white. Just means that it's not heavily into red side and not heavily into the white side. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, I hope we see more of that kind of stuff with this, because I think that's a much more balanced card. Anyway, Spirit Cleric, 4/2 with flyer. When return past color enters the battlefield, return target spirit, instant, or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is another way to kind of get stuff out of the graveyard that works well with the Quintorius Field Historian. So it can be pretty sweet stuff here. And you get instant sorceries and spirit cards back from the graveyard to your hand, which is really nice. So this can be a decent card draw. At the same time, it's 6 mana. It's really expensive. If this has, trample and haste and +1/+1, it's still a 6 mana 5/3 flyer with trample, which is, it's not the absolute worst. I think it's more of a limited card than it is anything else. And so anyway, we'll see. And then we of course have Reduce Memory, another lesson card. Exile target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. This is also really good in a spirit deck. I think it can be decent if you can give this +1/+1 trample, haste, whatever else. You can exile a land that you don't need anymore to attack in for lethal. This is very similar to core spirit dancer, I think, or core Skyclave Apparition. There it is, Skyclave Apparition. So many cards with the same names. I'm sorry if it's hard to remember all of them right away. Anyway, where instead of them having to actually kill the core spirit dancer, they immediately get the token out right away. But this hits any non-land permanent, doesn't have a mana cost limit, so you can kill an Ugin with this. You can kill whatever. Having this in the sideboard, if you ever find a learn card, you can have an actual answer to Ugins or whatever else they're going to be having in the future. So honestly, this is, if you're playing white, this goes as a full play set into your sideboard. Absolutely. There are times when it's worse for them to get the 3/2 than exile certain non-land permanents, but then you don't use this card. It's in the sideboard for a reason, to go grab something better for whatever situation. I don't know why you wouldn't run a full playset of this if you're running white and learn mechanics in your deck. This is just an absolute 4 of. I'm not sure if this comes into the main deck though. That's the biggest question I think for this one is, are you running this in the main deck even if you're not running learn mechanics? I think it's better to probably run full playset of this in the sideboard and find something that's a decent learn mechanic. It looks like there's some decent cards that do have learn mechanic on them, just so that you can go grab whatever else you need as well, because then it becomes a versatile card rather than just running this. But I think it's really good. All right, Radiant Skull Wielder, 4 mana, Dwarf Cleric, 2/4, instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink at the beginning, which is kind of like Firesong and Sunspeaker. Super awesome, except it's all instants and sorcery spells. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. If a spell was if a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile instead. Sorry, this one is a rare card that I accidentally missed, so in the uncommon side, but this one is busted. So you can cast a bunch of different spells. This is basically the perfect top end for a burn deck, which actually might make burn work in standard setting, because one of the biggest issues is if you run out of cards on turn 4 or something like that, and you just don't have anything else to keep doing. This is really great card to be casting anyway on turn 4. If it does survive, you get to just keep casting burn spells from the graveyard over and over again. They give you lifelink, so that means that you don't have to protect your life total as much. You just hit face. You don't have to hit creatures as often. This is a decent blocker, being at 2/4, the stat line there. At the same time, though, it has to survive to actually be useful, because it's at the beginning of the upkeep. Doesn't do something right away necessarily. At the same time, though, if you cast, get this on in the later turns, then on turn 6 you can play this out and still cast something like a lightning strike or whatever, and still do 3 points of damage with lifelink. So pretty cool stuff. Really, really awesome if you ever do, what's the Storm's Wrath. If you have Storm's Wrath and cast this, then 4 damage to everything, and you have lifelink, gain 100 life. Why don't you? Or that kind of thing. So this is definitely an awesome card. I'm not sure where it goes exactly yet, but I'm really excited for it. Reconstruct History, 4 mana sorcery, return up to 1 target artifact card, up to 1 target enchantment card, up to 1 target instant card, up to 1 target sorcery card, and up to 1 target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. And then you exile this card. 4 mana, potentially draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. Yeah, you have to be playing this in a deck that is definitely going to be, playing all those different things: artifacts, enchantments, instant sorceries, and planeswalkers. But honestly, there's a lot of things that are like multiple things or whatever. Now I'm not totally sure what all would fit with this. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit creatures, which feels like that would go naturally, but there's a lot of different decks that are running many a thing. I think that this can definitely see play. I'm not sure what deck it goes into. Even if you're only getting 4 of these, you get to choose which 4 you're getting. I think this goes in as a 1 or 2 of in the deck, just to like be able to refill. It's a dead card in the early game for sure. I don't think this is really going to be useful even on turn 4. This is definitely more of a turn 7, turn 8, refill my hand with all of my best things possible card. A good top deck, so it just has like a 1 or 2 of, it's pretty sweet. But 4 mana, draw 5 is definitely powerful, and choosing which things you're drawing from the graveyard is absolutely powerful if you ever get to get this off on all modes. If you don't, it becomes a lot worse. Master of Symmetries, 4 mana, 4/4 Rhinoceros Druid with reach. Whatever. I love how a Rhinoceros gets reach, but like Nylea does not. That doesn't get reach, but a Rhinoceros, obviously has reach. It says whenever a creature you control with power equal to its toughness attacks, it gains trample until end of turn. So this, of course, has a 4/4, so its power is equal to its toughness. And this is the first Lord that I think I've ever seen for things being like, we've seen some Tetsuko, that anything that attacks him with 1 power or 1 toughness will be able to attack him without blockable. We've seen things like similar to that kind of effect, or things with high toughness. This is the first one that's just like generic cards, things that have the same amount of power as toughness, they suddenly have a Lord. And I'm actually really excited for this. And I think it actually can be pretty decent. There's some good decks with that. First off, Questing Beast. Questing Beast getting trample is one of the things that we've not wanted to have happen for forever and ever. This is a way to do that. Questing Beast has 4/4 as well, same power and toughness. It has trample without even having to put an Embercleave onto it. So Mono Green Stompy, I think, throws a couple of these into it and it becomes better for sure. The 4-drop slot is a little bit packed right now, and having it be 2 full makes this a little bit harder. So I think that having a bunch of good 3 drops that can get trample as well becomes better. But I think Egon is also 6/6. There's a bunch of other creatures that will kind of fit within this. So I think there's some pretty sweet Stompy decks that actually like this a lot. All right, up against Thunderous Orator, 2 mana, core wizard, 2/2 with vigilance. Whenever it attacks, it gains flying until end of turn. If you control a creature with flying, the same is true for first strike, double strike, death touch, indestructible, lifelink, menace, and trample. So if you control a creature with all the things, then this gets those things as well, but it also has vigilance. So pretty sweet stuff. I actually think this card could be decent. Just for funsies, I definitely want to make this with Crystalline Giant, so that they can each, I don't know what they're going to get, but they're going to get one of them, and then they both have it, and it's going to be sweet. That's the kind of thing my mind goes to right away. That's definitely not the The recipe for a good deck, but oh boy, would it be fun. All right. Next is Lorehold Excavation. Lorehold Colors, not Boros. Enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you mill a card, and if it was a land card milled this way, you gain 1 life. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Playing a bunch of modal lands can make this just be 1 damage to the opponent every end step, and then like a Torbrand makes it 3 damage every end step. Having multiple of these can be actually a pretty sweet way to just win games pretty quickly. You just play lots of modal lands, not really worry about it as much, like very low chance of hitting land cards, but if you do hit it, you're still getting life, which is sweet. And then you can pay 5 to exile a creature card from your graveyard, and you create a tapped 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. I don't know why the other guy gives a bunch of spirits haste when, you know, this like one of the best ways to create spirit here, just something that's enchantments on the board, brings it out tapped, so you can't ever actually attack in with haste. A little bit annoyed by that, but that's probably why they did it as well. So anyway, yeah, that's cool. I think this card could be good. I think if you're going to turn this into a good card, it has to be with Torbrand and going the route of just trying to get as much damage out of it as possible. And you do mill cards. I'm not sure if that's something you necessarily want to be doing. There are some good escape cards, like with the Phoenix or whatever, in red and white. And so there's not a ton of great white escape cards, I don't believe, except for the Planeswalker. So anyway, I think you could definitely do some good stuff with this card. I'm not sure how powerful it is just yet. Go Blink. 3 mana sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, then exile all cards from that player's graveyard. Honestly, I think as far as any of the 3 mana player discards 2 cards, this is probably one of the best ways, the best versions of this so far, is having cards getting exiled. Like, so one of the biggest issues is you go to play these kinds of cards and people want their graveyard filled. You know, they want Croxa, they want whatever else, and so this can be a great way to make sure that they discard the cards and everything gets exiled right away. So this is basically just saying, you know, not just discard 2 cards, but they exile 2 cards from their hand and all of their graveyard. So that's pretty sweet stuff, actually. This is one of the best of this kind of card I think I've ever seen, just because I think it can be versatile in different places. I think it at least finds home in a sideboard against certain matchups. Sounds like there's a lot of ways to bring sorceries and stuff back from the graveyards, or having things in graveyards is going to be nice in this set. So being able to exile graveyards, I think is definitely worthwhile. I'm not sure this takes the place of Elspeth Conquers Death, or not the other one, that Elspeth's Nightmare card. I think that's just ultimately better. Yeah, it only discards 1 card, but you also get to kill something and exile graveyards. So it's not better than that. But if you're playing a discard decks actually might have a home in this one, just because we're getting enough good discard. So perhaps. Especially in Historic right now. Future Potential Potion. 1 mana instant. You gain 2 life, and target creature gets plus X+X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. This card is actually pretty exciting. I'm not sure all the ways that you can actually gain life in white, or sorry, in green. But in white, there's plenty of ways to do it. So if you're playing like a Selesnya deck with this, the amount of life gain you can hit can be atrocious. And having this just be a 1 mana, like Righteous Valkyrie, occasionally just gains tons and tons of life on a turn, but maybe you're taking a lot of damage beforehand, so you don't quite have lethal because they didn't get the buff on everything, or you can only attack them with it as the flyer. This just kind of becomes a way to finish things off. And so I think that playing like a Selesnya deck, Clerics or something like that, or whatever else you can concoct with this, that gains a decent amount of life. So this just by itself is a 1 mana, give +2/+2. Because you gain life first, but this can be 1 mana, give something like +20/+20. That would be probably not very likely, but it can be busted. I like it. All right, Dueling Coach, 4 mana, Human Monk, 2/2. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And then you can pay 5, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter onto each creature control with a +1/+1 counter on it. It's not very good. I mean. What's the other card that does the exact same thing, but you remove counter from itself, but counters onto all creatures? That's a 2 mana spell. Like that even is sometimes hard to make this effect be useful and powerful. I would definitely not play this in anything outside of Limited. In Limited, maybe this can end up being decent if you're, it's a good way to keep building your board over and over again on every turn, but it's definitely not that great. 3 mana, 2/2, Core Shaman, Lorehold Pledge Mage, first strike. Sorry, jumping around everywhere on this card. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. We already seen this kind of effect a couple times. This one has first strike, which is a cool thing. If you're playing a bunch of cards with Magecraft and they're all getting +1/+1 on each thing, like we've actually seen quite a few cards like this. If every one of them are triggering off every single time you cast any spells, and you're playing pump spells and everything like that, just put it on the best one. Boom, bam, done. There's the spell that gets you a learn card to get more stuff to cast, as well as giving +3/+1 and trample for 3 mana. Play that on the turn after with a bunch of other spells, or whatever you need to be doing. You can do a lot of damage on turn 4, turn 5 in a deck like that. So I'm not sure if that ends up being like an actual legit deck, but it could be good. I'm not sure. All right, Illustrious Historian, 2 mana, Human Shaman, 2/1, 5, exile it from your graveyard. So if it goes to the graveyard, you can exile it for 5 mana, create a tapped 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. Again, with a tapped spirit creature token. So you can't actually, activate these the next turn, and the guy that gives them all +1/+1s with trample and haste. The haste doesn't matter because they're all tapped. I love how they immediately just like take away the cool things with it. But you can also just cast lots of spirits that are spirits from hand, and that can be really powerful still. Anyway, Heated Debate, 3 mana instant. This spell can't be countered, and it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Instant speed at 3 mana. I think that it's just there's too many good cards at 2 mana, and that's a big deal when it comes to good removals. You want it to be at 2 mana so you can kill the threats on turn 2, especially if you're on the draw. Having it not be countered means that this is a good card against rogues, and that's about it. This is a really good spell against rogues, so maybe it comes in as a sideboard card against rogues, but that's the only place I really think you could see this card. It's not that like it's the absolute worst card, but that's the only place I would probably play it. Dueling Discovery, Laurel Colors again, sorcery. You gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards if you do draw 3 cards. So it's a Cathartic Reunion that gains you 2 life as well. The cool thing about this is that Cathartic Reunion cards can sometimes just be completely dead because there's not a May blade. I think you have to have the cards to discard to use it. If you're trying to go for Magecraft effects, or if you're trying to do whatever else, this just gains you 2 life. And, refills your hand, especially if you have dead cards, or if you're trying to fill your graveyard with different things. This is like, okay, fill my graveyard with the spells that I want to cast with the guy that with the Ifrit Flame Dance or whatever that gets to cast a bunch of spells from the graveyard. So throw things in the graveyard, reanimate for later, and gain 2 life. So I like this card better than a Cathartic Reunion, because even if you don't have the cards to discard, you just gain 2 life, and then you may discard the cards. Don't do it. Don't draw the cards. That's fine. You can just gain 2 life if you absolutely need to. So I like it. It's good. Relic Sloth, 5 mana, 4/4 Vigilant with Menace. Sweet. It's a card. It's a limited card. Sweet. Stonebound Mentor, 3 mana, 3/3. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you scry 1. This can actually be a pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways to kind of have it leave the graveyard more and more. I think the basic consensus is that scrying 3 to 4 times equals 1 draw, because you get that much value out of it. So if you can scry 3 or 4 times with this, which I do think there are ways to make that happen, then it could be like drawing a card every once in a while, but there's better cards still. But it is a spirit. That's something. Spirit Summoning, 3 mana lesson that just is create a 3/2 white spirit creature token, and it doesn't come in tapped. So if you are playing a bunch of spirits or whatever else that can come out with this is a great lesson card, sideboard card for that deck. If you are playing anything with learn, I'm not sure how many spirits there are that offer learn, but there's a bunch of other effects that can give learn, so it can be decent. I'm not sure if that spirit deck is actually going to be a thing or not. I feel like it's like it has the awesome top end lords, and it has a bunch of ways to create spirits, but they all are not quite powerful enough, and so I'm in between on it right now. Beaming Defiance, 2 mana instant. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. So this is basically Blossoming Defense, but for 1 extra mana, and it's in white instead of green. Blossoming Defense was a busted card at 1 mana, but it was busted because it was at 1 mana. Having this be 2 mana that does this type of effect, having it be in white is cool. White already has protection. Hexproof is nice to have sometimes instead. Giving it a buff is pretty nice. I think that all the decks that are like that deck that's trying to play Magecraft to kind of get in with all this stuff, this is the card that deck absolutely wants. but it's not 1 mana. Like we already have seen Blossoming Defense be a card. This not being that card means that it's just not as good. And so it's just a bummer that I feel like they just power creep in a bunch of other places, and then they just don't give white the exact same card that the green has. They're like, oh no, it's not going to be as good, which in some ways makes sense, but still. All right, Ageless Guardian, 2 mana, 1/4, Spirit Soldier. It's another Spirit Force. Yeah, okay, moving on. Sorry, I didn't put these ones in order necessarily on the things that were completely not worthwhile, and so there are some that are still interesting. Dairy and Books. This one's pretty fun. 5 mana, instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets an attacking creature. Busted card in limited. You just put target creature into its owner's library second from the top. So 3 mana to put an attacking creature. This is sometimes better than killing stuff to put it on its owner's library second from the top. They don't draw it right away, but if it's like a not very good creature or something like a Knight of the Ebon Legion or Fervent Champion or something like that, where the card is good if it's getting in for damage consistently, but in the late game, like 2 turns later, they're not going to be wanting to draw another 1-drop, especially if there's no counters on it or anything like that they've put time into. This can actually be seen, I think, in constructed play. Just if they're attacking with creatures, then you can do it. If they're not attacking in, you can still do it instant speed for 5 mana. So it's not like it's a dead card, even if they're not attacking in. So I like this type of effect. I think this actually is pretty decent. It only hits creatures. I'm not sure exactly where to put this. There is just, if you can get removal for 2 mana, it's better than having removal for 3 or 5 mana. But this isn't a dead card, is basically what I'm saying. It could be decent. Curate. 2 mana, instant. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order, then draw a card. I like this actually because you do get to fill your graveyard with this. So if you're just trying to fill your graveyard, it's otherwise it's scry 2, basically draw a card. But this is basically surveil. You get to surveil 2 and then draw a card, which is actually a pretty powerful effect. So surveil, look at those. Do I put them on the graveyard? I want to keep on top. Okay, and then I get to draw whatever card I left on top, or put those in the graveyard and I can grab them later on. So it's surveil without having to be in the Dimir colors, just in blue. And surveil was really busted in the past. So I think this is actually a really good cantrip. I like it quite a bit. Campus Guide, 2 mana Golem, 2/1. Whenever it enters battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and then shuffle it and put it on top of the library, which is just makes it a lot worse. But being colorless means that it's a good limited card to at least fix your mana base if you need to. So sure, that's basically what it's for. And then Lorehold Campus, land, enters battlefield tapped. You can add. So this is of course going to be a bunch of these different ones you can pay for to tap and scry. With Lorehold not being like the World's colors not typically being colors that you would be scrying with, I'm assuming that they're all going to have the same scry ability, but they might all have something a little bit different. I'm not sure. 4 mana to scry for 1 is interesting. There's the what's it called? The castle, the blue castle from Throne of Eldraine, that is paid for to tap and scry 2. But this is a dual land, which means that it's actually quite a bit better than that, especially not being in the blue colors. So this is actually not a terrible card, I don't think. I'm not sure if I rate it in a place where I'd actually play it, but maybe like as a 1-of if I'm in those colors. I don't want too many tap lands, but there's not that many great lands out there anyway right now, and if I need some tap lands or whatever, having the ones that just enter and scry is better, I think. But the fact that I can do this multiple times in the late game, it depends on if you're building a deck that goes in the late game. I think this replaces 1 temple, where like if you're going to play 4 temples, I think you take out 1 temple to replace 1 of these with it, because I think that's about the value where it's at, where it's like this can in the late game be better than the temples, than the scrylands in the early game. But having scries in the early game is better sometimes. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Sorry, diving way too deep into cards that probably aren't going to see much play at all. But we got through a bunch of stuff here today. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. We have some awesome cards here. What do you guys think of the Lorehold Dragon? That's our second dragon that we got to see. The Elder Dragons, I think those are pretty sweet. Do you think spirits actually have a shot with this? Leave it down in the comments below. I think ultimately spirits are interesting. interesting. I definitely, I think there's already some spirits that are in the format already that are pretty decent. And just having like a bunch of good like spirit flying attackers, whatever. They just got some pretty sweet lords on the 5-drop slot. 5-drop slot is really expensive for them to be really busted, but they also kind of dodge board wipes that way. So I don't know. I'm excited for it. I hope that the spirits are actually a thing, because we're going to build that deck for sure. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hopping on. See you guys in the next one, and bye-bye.